Well, it's not true. Because some are smart, some aren't.
The family subscribes to a racehorse theory of human development.
When you connect two racehorses, you usually end up with a fast horse.
Secretariat doesn't produce slow horses.
They believe that there are superior people, and that if you put together the genes of a superior woman and a superior man, you get a superior offspring.
You have to have the right genes.
I have a certain gene. I'm a gene believer.
Do we believe in the gene thing? I mean, I do.
I have great genes and all that stuff, which I'm a believer in.
Well, I think I was born with a drive for success.
I was born with a certain intellect. The fact is, you have to be born and blessed with something up here. God helped me by giving me a certain brain. It's this. It's not my salesmanship.
It's what?
This. You know what that is? It's the brain power.
I have Ivy League education, smart guy.
I have like a very, very high aptitude.
I'm pretty good at English. I always did very nicely in English.
I mean, like, I'm a smart person.
You're born a fighter, and I've seen a lot of people, they want to fight, but they can't.
Some people cannot genetically handle pressure.
I always said winning is somewhat maybe innate. Maybe it's just something you have. You know, you have the winning gene.
Frankly, it'd be wonderful if you could develop it, but I'm not so sure you can.
You know, I'm proud to have that German blood. There's no question about it. Great stuff.
You don't have to be poor anymore. Jesus is here.
The loudspeaker spoke up and said, Christianity is stupid.
Greetings, fellow worker slaves, podcasting at 128 kilobits from the Fortress of Squalitude, not far from the redneck Mecca. This is the Atheist in the Trailer Park Podcast. I'm your host, Tucker. Professor Fuzznuts is busy giving himself a bath by the kitchen sink. Yes, it's a podcast hosted by a guy and he's cat. Get over it. This is a news show episode, and sadly, America will not be joining us for this episode, as she's currently camping in the middle of nowhere. She should be back on the show in 2 weeks, though based on what she posted on Facebook, I'm not sure she'll survive her trip intact. Apparently, she and everyone with her is a bit of an inexperienced camper. I noticed after she left on her trip that nobody posted advice about keeping scorpions out of your shoes while you sleep. Being a touch cruel, I posted that advice now that she's almost to her destination, knowing that it would make her want to turn back, but also knowing that she was too far along in her trip to do so. Evil can be fun. Next episode will be a chapter 2 from the Apocrypha, and most likely my guest helping me read that will be Joe Kindick from Unbuckling the Bible Belt podcast. That opening clip you heard was from the new PBS Frontline documentary entitled The Choice, which is about Hillary Clinton and Trump. While you and I might find such comments to be repellent, I can assure you that most of his supporters would be nodding their heads in agreement with him. The mistake people seem to be making in this election cycle is in thinking that people reason themselves into voting for Trump. They don't. They're voting for Trump because they believe he'll fuck things up. They don't even care how he'll fuck them up, just that he'll so destroy the status quo in this country that things won't be the same anymore. They don't even care if he could flip things in a direction that they'd normally be opposed to. Movement is what they want, rather than the stagnation we seem to have now. You can blame much of his popularity on the GOP, not merely because they've been saying coded racist phrases for so long now, but because for the past 7 years of Obama's term, they've spent their time opposing everything Obama's tried to do without offering any kind of alternative. Had they rolled over and just let Obama do what he wants, or managed to come up with a few ideas on their own, conditions might not have been so ripe for Trump to get the nomination. I'll have more to say about this later on in the show. I have a new iTunes review to read. Actually, it's not that new, but I only just remembered to check iTunes for reviews, so my apologies to Rebel Ox for not mentioning it before now. Just started listening and felt like I had a couple of friends sitting at the kitchen table with me talking about all sorts of things. Loved it. Thanks for that. The more positive reviews I get, the higher the show ranks in iTunes and the more people will see it when searching for atheist-related podcasts. I also owe an apology to a listener. Kate had posted a couple of comments on the Libsyn page, but because I have set it up to require approval before posts are published, and Libsyn isn't great about notifying me that there's new comments, I didn't notice them until just the other day and approved them. Now, the reason I have it set up that way is because Libsyn doesn't really have much to do in the way of spam filtering, so if I don't set that up, then you get 8 billion spam comments, and nobody wants that. So, anyways, Kate's first comment was on episode 115, second Esdras, X marks what the fuck. She writes, "Great job, guys. How the hell did you even read that gibberish? And I thought the Book of Mormon was fucked." To answer your question, Kate, lots and lots of booze. I'm not kidding. Both of us were pretty smashed by the end of the episode. It's a wonder we didn't black out during the recording. We were so far gone. Her other comment was on episode 116, a taco truck serving baby-filled tacos on every corner. Best guest ever. I bet you could do a Kickstarter for an Auschwitz-themed fart, ride the boxcar train with no heat or sanitary facilities through the snow-covered Rocky Mountains to eventually arrive at some isolated area where you can experience the full effect of the warm and welcoming ovens. Overnight accommodations in the realistic concentration camps can be acquired for a nominal fee. Blankets and food are provided on a first-come, first-served basis. Please leave your jewelry, watches, and glasses with the security guard at the train station. Gold crowns or other dental work made of precious metals will be removed at no extra cost. Bars of soap with your favorite ethnic name carved on it may be purchased at the gift shop. All proceeds go to the Catholic Church Document Forgery Fund. Make your reservation for the entire family today. I have to agree that America's pretty great. That episode is the most listened to of any I've posted so far, and I give full credit to America. Sometimes when I put a show together, I have the title for the episode picked out before we record. Other times I just pull something out of my ass. But nearly every time America's on the show, she says something so brilliant that I either use it verbatim for the title, or it gives me an idea for the title. As soon as she went on her rant, I knew that I was going to have a great title. I didn't think that it'd be the most popular episode, but I knew I had a hit. And I have to also say that every episode where I've used her for an inspiration for a title, it's gotten more downloads than the average episode. She will always be welcome on the show. You have my word on it. As for your Kickstarter suggestion, let's not give the Catholic Church any ideas. They're liable to take it and run with it, coming up with something far worse than we can imagine. Sadly, I did not get to meet Shelley Segal this past week. We tried, but just couldn't manage to get our schedules to work out. I'm hoping that I will be able to do an interview with her again via Skype soon, but we'll have to see. If I hadn't just started my job, I probably could have managed to do it, but with my still being in my 90 days, I didn't want to take the risk of missing a day to go see her. My not having a car was also a bit of a problem. As for my new job, well, that's been kind of interesting, but to hear the details on that, you'll have to be a Patreon subscriber. Okay, that's enough of that. Let's get to the news.
You want freedom? You need to manipulate women to feel like a man? Do it! That's what we're here for!
This comes from scientificamerican.com. Scientists trace society's myths to primordial origins. Analyzing how stories change and the retelling down through the generations sheds light on the history of human migration going as far back as the Paleolithic period. The Greek version of a familiar myth starts with Artemis, goddess of the hunt, and fierce protectress of innocent young women. Artemis demands that Callisto, the most beautiful, and her other handmaidens take a vow of chastity. Zeus tricks Callisto into giving up her virginity, and she gives birth to a son, Arcas. Zeus's jealous wife, Hera, turns Callisto into a bear and banishes her to the mountains. Meanwhile, Arcas grows up to become a hunter, and one day happens on a bear that greets him with outstretched arms. Not recognizing his mother, he takes aim with his spear, but Zeus comes to the rescue. He transforms Callisto into the constellation Ursa Major, or Great Bear, and places Arcas nearby as Ursa Minor, the Little Bear. As the Iroquois of the northeastern U.S. tell it, 3 hunters pursue a bear. The blood of the wounded animal colors the leaves of the autumnal forest. The bear then climbs a mountain and leaps into the sky. The hunters and the animal become the constellation Ursa Major. Among the Chukchi, or Chukchi, a Siberian people, the constellation Orion is a hunter who pursues a reindeer, Cassiopeia. Among the Finno-Ugric tribes of Siberia, the pursued animal is an elk and takes the form of Ursa Major. Although the animals and the constellations may differ, the basic structure of the story does not. These sagas all belong to a family of myths known as the Cosmic Hunt, that spread far and wide in Africa, Europe, Asia, and the Americas among people who lived more than 15,000 years ago. Every version of the Cosmic Hunt, boy, obviously when the guy wrote this article, he didn't think about speaking it aloud. Because it's really hard to say Cosmic Hunt. Because you really just want to say Cosmic Cunt. But anyways, back to the article. Every version of the Cosmic Hunt shares a core storyline. A man or animal pursues or kills one or more animals, and the creatures are changed into constellations. There's a hell of a lot more to the article, and I'm not fully convinced that the article's premise that the various myths actually share a common origin, which dates from before humans migrated to the Americas, is accurate. I bring this article up because if it is true, and again, I'm not sure that the premise is true, it would reinforce one of the claims that TW Doane made in his Bible Myths book. That is certainly what he believed, but again, I'm not convinced that in the case of a hunting myth, other societies wouldn't come up with the same tale independently. After all, you're dealing with the same species of human following similar types of game at the same technological level as one another. Why shouldn't they tell similar stories? I haven't been able to find an email address for the author of the paper, but I have sent him a message via Facebook. I would really like to have him on the show as a guest. He works at a university in Paris, and I've got at least one French listener, so if you could figure out a way to make that whole 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon thing happen so I could have him on the show, I'd be eternally grateful. This next story comes from the independent.co.uk. Egyptian Member of Parliament calls for women to undergo virginity tests before being admitted to university. There's more to the article, but let's face it, the headline fucking says it all. Because religion puts a premium on the virginity of females, this asshat thinks that it's a great idea to perform what he'd call a medical exam, but really should be considered sexual assault on women before allowing them to enter college. This isn't terribly new for Egypt. During the so-called Arab Spring, women who were arrested for participating in numerous protests in Egypt were subjected to virginity tests at the police stations during the booking process. Pure and simple, this is nothing more than telling women, if you want to make yourself equal to men, you're going to be subjected to having the most intimate parts of your body probed. And before we pat ourselves on the back and think we're somehow superior, I urge you to go and read the accounts of women at places like BYU who've reported that they were raped. In every case, you'll find that the administration of the university, and it's not just BYU, it's nearly any religious university you can think of, and, well, hell, even state-run universities have the same attitude. They've all treated the women who've reported being raped like shit, in some cases worse than other. At places like BYU, simply living on your own, if you're a woman, is enough to render your report of being raped suspect. I don't remember the woman's name. I've read the article, and I've basically blocked it out because it is so horrible. But there was, within the past year or so, a woman who was raped while attending BYU, and they put her through all kinds of shit with the administration of the university saying, well, you asked for it, because she lived like a normal human being lives in the 21st century.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
Asps. Very dangerous. You go first.
This story comes from ScienceDaily.com. New evidence shifts the timeline back for human arrival in the Americas. Ancient artifacts found at an archaeological site in Argentina suggest that humans occupied South America earlier than previously thought. Approximately 13,000 years ago, a prehistoric group of hunter-gatherers known as the Clovis people lived in Northern America. Previous research suggests that the Clovis culture was one of the earliest cultures in the Americas. However, more recent research from the Pampas region of Argentina suggests the hypothesis that early Homo sapiens arrived in the Americas earlier than the Clovis period, than the Clovis hunters did. Wow, that's awkwardly worded. The evidence for earlier human arrival in the Americas comes from a rich archaeological site in southeastern South America called Arroyo Seco II. A group of scientists led by Gustavo Politis from CONICET and the Universidad Nacional del Centro de la Provincia de Buenos Aires, and I haven't had Spanish for 30 years, so my apologies for butchering that, present the research in a new PLOS ONE study. Now, I could swear that I've read articles which put humans living in the Americas as far back as 20,000 years ago. And I've read things which have claimed that some of the oral legends of Native Americans must date, for whatever reason, as far back as 40,000 years ago. But this story certainly pushes the arrival of humans back to at least 14,000 years ago. It's fascinating because it shows that we humans were a fairly mobile species from almost our earliest beginnings. I don't have a link, but there's a recent discovery of evidence that our ancestors migrated out of Africa in multiple waves rather than leaving the continent all at once, as was previously thought. And by all at once, I mean we started moving out and just kept moving out. But in reality, it looks like we moved out, stopped migrating from Africa for a few thousand years, and then began migrating out from Africa again, stopping for a period of time and restarting until we got to a period where there was plentiful migration out of Africa. This next story also comes from ScienceDaily.com. Ear ossicles of modern humans and Neanderthals. Different shape, similar function. Scientists have scanned the skulls of Neanderthals and found the small middle ear ossicles, which are important for hearing, still preserved within the cavities of the ear. To their surprise, the Neanderthal ossicles are morphologically distinct from the ossicles of modern humans. Despite the differences in morphology, the function of the middle ear is largely the same in the two human species. The authors relate the morphological differences in the ossicles to different evolutionary trajectories in brain size increase and suggest that these findings might be indicative of consistent aspects of vocal communication in modern humans and Neanderthals. These findings are also of importance for shedding light on the emergence of human spoken language, which can only be inferred indirectly from the archaeological and fossil record. There's a lot of complicated scientific jargon in the article, but what it boils down to, at least as far as I can tell, is that while the ears of the Neanderthals might have been more attuned to certain frequencies than our own, they almost certainly would have been capable of speech. Even though the bones of the inner ear weren't identical to ours, they weren't so different in capabilities to our own that they automatically rule out the ability to speak. Additionally, and this isn't mentioned in the article, but scientists have discovered the best place to find DNA in ancient fossils of early hominids is in the ear bones. The whole inner ear, the whole inner ear is so deep inside the skull and so well preserved that DNA can be extracted from there. So, one day we may be able to clone Neanderthals and dinosaurs. I hope I get to see that.
Ah, Kirk, my old friend. Do you know the Klingon proverb that tells us revenge is a dish that is best served cold? It is very cold in space.
This story comes from Gizmodo.com. Another one of Saturn's moons may have a global ocean. The evidence is mounting that our solar system is rife with oceans. Last week, scientists reported that Pluto could have an insanely deep liquid water swimming pool beneath its surface. And on Monday, NASA revealed new evidence for geyser activity on icy Europa. Now, another frozen moon is poised to join the club of outer space scuba retreats. Doane, the fourth largest moon of Saturn, Doane was first imaged by the Voyager space probes in the 1980s and has been viewed more recently by the Cassini spacecraft during a series of 5 close flybys. It's a beautiful cratered ball of ice and rock, home to deep canyons and towering cliffs. While early flybys offered hints of geologic activity, there's never been a smoking gun to prove Doane is alive inside, particularly when compared to its next-door neighbor and orbital resonance partner, Enceladus, which is spewing seawater out of enormous geysers. But a new study, which has been accepted for publication in geophysical research letters, suggests we may have underestimated Doane. The moon could have a liquid ocean water beneath its surface, just like Enceladus, using a geophysical model that depicts a crust floating atop a mantle. Michael Bayouth of the Royal Observatory of Belgium shows that gravity data collected by Cassini can be explained by a roughly 100 kilometer, 62 mile for those of us who are stuck in backwards countries like the US, thick shell of ice enveloping a 65 kilometer, 40 miles deep ocean. To reverse this for a moment, when Burt Rutan won the X Prize with Spaceship One, they flew 100 kilometers high. So, that's how thick the ice is on Doane. Doane's ocean, in turn, would smother a rocky core. Fucking fuck me. Back in 2012, it was revealed that Doane has an oxygen atmosphere. While it's not 100% certain, the presence of free oxygen raises the possibility of there being life on Doane. Oxygen is one of those elements which tends to rapidly combine with other elements, unless there's a source which continuously produces it. On Earth, that source is most likely to be plants. If we were to detect free oxygen in the atmosphere of an exoplanet, we'd be strongly leaning towards it having life. Yes, there's a chance that non-biological processes could create oxygen, but life is a really strong fucking candidate for creating it. This story also comes from Gizmodo.com. X-ray images of bird feathers hold the secret to dinosaur colors. Textbook illustrations and museum dioramas could soon be even more accurate in their depiction of the rich colors of long-extinct animals like dinosaurs. An international team of scientists used advanced X-ray imaging techniques to map out elements related to pigmentation in modern birds of prey, which they will use to reconstruct the likely color patterns of fossil specimens. Scientists at the Stanford Synchrotron Radiation Light Source, SLAC, National Accelerator Laboratory, and the United Kingdom's Diamond Light Source teamed up with researchers from the University of Manchester on the experiments described in a new paper in Scientific Reports. The critical factor here is melanin, which determines variation in skin tone in humans and plays a big role in the coloring of mammals and birds. But little is known about its exact chemistry, according to lead author Nick Edwards of the University of Manchester, because the stuff is notoriously difficult to characterize via the usual methods. In the next Patreon episode, you'll hear America and I talking about scientists having a better idea about the color of dinosaurs. This research they're describing in this article takes that concept even farther. Never in my life did I think that we'd be able to figure out what color dinosaurs were. And now it turns out we'll soon be able to get very precise information about such things. God damn, science is fucking awesome. And while America does disagree with me, I am totally for cloning dinosaurs and allowing them to roam free upon the earth. Fuck yeah!
He'll bring them death, and they will love him for it.
This story comes from thedailybeast.com. Silicon Valley money floods to Hillary after Facebook fat cat revealed as secret Trumpkin. And honestly, I have to say, I love this article for no other reason than for turning me on to the word Trumpkin. Anyways, it says Silicon Valley entrepreneurs and Oculus Rift developers are donating to Hillary Clinton in direct response to news that Oculus founder Palmer Luckey is backing a political action group pushing shit posts, and that's in quotes, on behalf of Donald Trump. Some developers are even pulling support for the Oculus Rift and refusing to continue game development on the platform until Luckey is removed from Facebook, where Luckey's LinkedIn status states he's worked since he sold Oculus VR to the social media juggernaut for $2 billion in 2014. A Daily Beast investigation revealed that Luckey, who sold Oculus Rift for $2 billion in 2014, Jesus fuck, guys! I'm drunk and I recognize that's bad English. Anyways, Palmer Luckey used the pseudonym Nimble Rich Man to act as the vice president of Nimble America, which is dedicated to making pro-Trump meme magic. A spokesperson for the organization said it had raised $11,000 before a Saturday fundraising round on Reddit. Now, Palmer Luckey claims that he's a libertarian and that he thought he was supporting a libertarian cause, but as the article goes on to explain, that's bullshit. The evidence is pretty clear that Luckey loves him some Trump, and this should scare the shit out of everyone listening to this podcast. The guy's a billionaire, and he's clearly detached from reality because he's supporting Trump. Hopefully the money donated by people appalled by his actions will counteract the money he's given to pro-Trump organizations. And I'm not convinced that he isn't the guy who's actually running Nimble America. The article isn't entirely clear on who is running it, but having been involved in a few shady organizations in my time, I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't all a front that he created to try and cover up his love of Trump. Okay. This next story comes from theadvocate.com. Donald Trump adds anti-gay Rick Santorum to religious council. Do I really need to say any more? There's talk by some Trump supporters that he doesn't have an issue with LGBTQI folks, and maybe he doesn't, but he's obviously willing to pander to those who do by bringing on Rick Santorum as an advisor. To read from the article for a moment, Donald Trump has hired Rick Santorum, the former U.S. Senator from Pennsylvania, as an advisor for his Catholic Advisory Council. Santorum, who ended his campaign for president, that's being generous, in February, is one of 35 people slated for the council. In a press release announcing the council, Trump included a list of issues important to Catholics. The topics on the list include religious liberty, pro-life issues, judicial nominations, education, healthcare, jobs, and taxation and safety and security. In June, Santorum signed an anti-gay pledge in solidarity to defend marriage that claims marriage should only exist between a man and a woman. Santorum has also said he would reinstate the ban on Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Boy, that's poorly written. Because the ban on Don't Ask, Don't Tell would mean that you could be open about being gay. So either he means the author of the article, and I didn't copy their name over, so I don't know if it's a man or a woman, but whatever, they mean either he wants to reinstate Don't Ask, Don't Tell, or he wants to kick gay people out of the military and transgender people as well, since they're now allowed in. The former senator has also defined religious liberty in the past, and it is something that Trump comments on in his list of issues of importance to Catholics. I am reasonably certain that Trump doesn't believe in any God other than himself, but I'm also certain that he'll be more than happy to exploit religious individuals if it enables him to do what he wants. And one last story before I get out of here. I can't really read from it as it's a profile of a Trump supporter by the Washington Post. I'll have a link to it in the show notes so you can read it for yourself. It's entitled, Finally, Someone Who Thinks Like Me. It's about a woman named Melanie Austin, and the article demonstrates, even though it doesn't directly say it, how the progressive movement has failed the very people it should be helping. Melanie worked on the railroad for 20 years, and during that time she had to endure countless acts of sexual harassment, everything from name-calling to having her underwear flown like a flag from a train. Eventually she sued and won a nice judgment against the railroad, only to have it thrown out on an appeal because the judge felt that her employer had taken adequate measures to address the situation. Eventually, the stress from her job caused her to have a nervous breakdown, and she was fired. If you think it's odd that she'd now be an enthusiastic supporter of a misogynist like Trump, you don't understand human nature. Nobody in the progressive movement helped her. If you listen to right-wing radio, you'd think that progressives would immediately swoop in to help her out and award control of the railroad over to her as their dastardly way of exacting revenge, but they didn't. Even the establishment Republicans didn't help her, let alone the Democrats. So along comes Trump, and he appeals to her because he's going to sweep away the old order. He's not offering the same old promises that other politicians are doing. He's not saying, we will try. He's saying, I'm going to. That's a powerful distinction in her mind. He's also promising not merely to improve America again by creating jobs. He's promising to make others suffer. And that's the key. Make others suffer. Melanie doesn't merely want to see people booted out of their offices. She wants to see them suffer the way she has suffered. Had the progressive movement not merely been marking time since at least W was elected, there might have been groups she could have turned to for support. Had the Democrats not taken union support for granted, but said to them, we'll push for greater protection of unions if you push to expand your membership by adding more women and minorities to your ranks as well as leadership positions, she might not have found herself facing the kind of harassment in the workplace that she did. Or she might have been able to get help from the union. It's sad that this woman feels so abandoned by the groups which claim to have her interests at heart, that she reaches out to someone as reprehensible as Trump. But what else is she supposed to do? Nobody out there gets the kind of coverage or offers the kind of promises that Trump does. That she'll no doubt suffer under a Trump presidency doesn't occur to her. All she knows that the people she blames for her problems will have to suffer as much as she does now. If you're a passionate Hillary supporter, and you want to ensure that she gets 2 terms, then I urge you to reach out to people like Melanie. Offer them not only emotional support, but financial support if they need it. Because if people like Melanie are still hurting in 2020 after 4 years of Hillary, then whomever the Republicans run will have a damned good shot at winning. And that person is going to be following Trump's playbook closely. If they deviate from it, it's going to be because they think that Trump was too soft and his opinions. I hope that thought keeps you awake at night. I know it does me. My apologies for this episode being a little shorter than usual, but because I wasn't sure if it was going to be an interview with Shelley Segal or not, I wasn't quite as prepared as normally am on news episodes, and without having America here, it's not a lot of extra chatter. So, anyways, thanks for listening.
That's it for another episode of The Atheist in the Trailer Park Podcast. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes. It's also available on Stitcher. Follow the show on Twitter at TParkAtheist and on Facebook at facebook.com/trailerparkatheist. Email Tucker at trailerparkatheist@gmail.com. Show notes can be found at tparkatheist.blogspot.com. Thanks for listening.
Say goodnight, Fuzz-Nuts.
All I know is this violates every canon of respectable broadcasting.
Damned cat.